Hello guys, welcome to EduMoon tutorial series. I am Karthik, the instructor for object-oriented programming. In today's lecture, we will be looking at Introduction to C++. This is the second chapter in object-oriented programming. This is the syllabus for the second chapter of object-oriented programming. The entire syllabus is divided into three parts: basic structure of C++ program, followed by variables and constants, symbolic constants, basic data types and derived data types. Then we'll be having variable declaration, dynamic initialization, type modifiers, typecasting, input-output statements in C++, followed by operators and few example programs. In the second section, we have control structures and then functions. In today's lecture, we'll be starting from basic structure of a C++ program and we'll be discussing till basic data types and derived data types. Basic structure of a C++ program. The structure of a C++ program is divided into the following sections. First is the header file section, which comes at the starting point of the program, followed by global declaration section, which contains all the global variables which we'll be using throughout the program, which is then followed by class declaration and method definition section, where we'll be creating classes as a part of object-oriented programming, and we'll also be defining the methods that are declared in the class. And then we have the main function, which is the actual start point of our code execution. The header file declaration. The header file provides prototype declaration for different library functions. So basically the header file is used to incorporate all the libraries which we'll be using in our program. So hash include iostream.h. Here iostream.h is header file. This header file includes all the functions that are used to deal with the input and output operations in a C++ program. Here hash is a preprocessor directive. This means that we should be incorporating all the library functions that are required using the name of the header file. Preprocessing is the phase of the compilation before the actual execution. We can also include user-defined header file. Basically all preprocessor directives are written in this section, that is the header file declaration section. The global declaration section. The global declaration section contains all the global variables, classes and structures that are defined throughout the program. Global variables are defined outside all the functions, usually on the top of the program. The global variables will hold their values throughout the lifetime of the program. A global variable can be accessed by any function. And also we can see that the global declaration may also include declaring structures, declaring classes and declaring variables. Now we'll be looking at the class declaration section. This section can be considered as the subsection for the global declaration section. Class declaration and all methods of the class are defined here. Let's look at an example of a class. So basically a class is a set of both data and functions in a single unit. Here we can see a class called as demo. So demo is the class name and class is the keyword which you are using to define this demo class. And then here the data can be called as int a, int b. And here the functions are void input and void output. And these are all the public type. You can also inherit from one class to another class in this section. The next section is the member definition section. All the methods that are declared inside the class function will be defined here. This section is optional in the structure of a C++ program, because you can define member functions inside the class or outside the class. If at all the members are defined inside the class, then there is no actual requirement of this section. This section is used only when you want to define the member of a function outside the class. So let's take a look at this program. Here void refers to the return type of this input function, and demo is the class name, and this symbol here is the scope resolution operator. This tells that the scope of the input function is confined to the demo class. Here we'll be taking the input of A followed by the input of B. The main function section. Each and every C++ program always starts with a main function. Here the start actually means the actual execution of the program. That is, every C++ program gets executed with its starting point as the main function. So here we can see that this is the entry point for all the functions. Each and every method is called indirectly through the main function. We can create class objects in the main function. The operating system calls in this function automatically. So let's see how we can call the actual demo class which we have defined previously. So inside the int main function, we'll be defining an object of class demo. So here we'll be giving the class name followed by the object name. And then using the object name, we'll be accessing the input function or method that belongs to the demo class. Now let's look at variables. Variables are used in C++ where we will need to store any type of values within a program and whose value can be changed during the program execution. So as the name says, a variable. A variable contains the value which can vary. A variable is the name given to a memory location which can store values of different data types. Now let's look at the syntax. Here the syntax is quite simple. We'll be having the data type and the variable name. The data type tells us what kind of data can this particular variable name hold. Here data type means the valid C++ data types like int, float, double, character, boolean. Now let's look at the rules for declaring a variable. A variable name can consist capital letters, lowercase letters, and digits and an underscore. Here underscore is the only special character that is allowed during a variable declaration. The first character must always be a letter or an underscore. It cannot be a digit. The blank spaces cannot be used in a variable name. That is, a variable name should be continuous. Special characters like hash, dollar symbol are not allowed. C++ keywords cannot be used as variable names. That is, we can't use class, int, new, main, and many other keywords as variable names. Variable names are case sensitive. So let's consider an example. Int capital A and int small a. These both are different and they are not the same because one has capital case and one has small case. A variable name can consist of 31 characters. If we declare a variable with more than 31 characters, the compiler will ignore the characters that are after the 31st character. A variable type can be boolean, character, int, float, double, void, or void char. Now let's look at an example. This is a simple C++ program. Here we have the hash include iostream and then we have a line called using namespace std. We'll discuss more about this in the upcoming lectures. Then we have the starting point of the execution of the program, that is the main function. So as this main function will be returning a value of integer, so here we'll be returning 0, that is return 0. And then here we have the int main. This is the actual starting point of the execution of the program. And inside the int main we have two variables, int a and int b, and then we have another variable which is called int result. Now a will be having the value 5 and b will be having the value 2. Now a is incremented, that is a equals to a plus 1. Here a will be 5 plus 1, 6. Now result is equals to a minus b. Here we know that a is 6 now and b is 2. So 6 minus 2 will be 4. Now cout. Cout actually prints out the value to the output screen. This prints out the value 4 to the screen. Now let's look at constants. A constant value is the one which does not change during the execution of the program. Constant uses the secondary storage area. Constants are those quantities whose value does not change during the execution of the program. That is, constants has a fixed value. In C++ language, we have constants are of two types. First is the numeric constant and second is the non-numeric constant. In numeric constant, we have integer numeric constants. They are further subdivided into decimal integer numeric constant, octal integer numeric constant, and hexadecimal integer numeric constant. And in the float or real numeric constant, this is basically the type where the number is not an actual integer. That is, it has a decimal point. Float numeric constant consists of fractional part in the representation. Integer constants are inadequate to represent quantities that vary continuously. That means integer can only take discrete values. These quantities are represented by containing fractional parts like 26.082. Examples of real constants are 0.0026, minus 0.97, and so on. Now the other type of constants are non-numeric constants or character constants. Character constants have either a single character or a group of characters or a character with backslash used for special purposes. These are further subdivided into three types: single character constant, string character constant, and backslash character constant. Now let's look at symbolic constants. Symbolic constants refers to as fixed values, unlike variables whose values can be altered. Constants, as the name implies, does not change, they remain constant. They can be of any data type. It is considered best practice to define symbolic constants using only the uppercase names. There are two different ways to define them in C++. The first one is by using constant keyword, that is const, and the second one is by using hash define preprocessor. Now let's look at the syntax. Const type constant name and equating it to a value using the equal to sign. Now let's look at the example. Here we have the const keyword and then the data type and then the size, and it's equal to 10. So always the size value is fixed to 10. So in case if we do not do this initialization part, by default for int data type, the value will be assigned to 0. Now let's look at creating a symbolic constant using the define preprocessor. Hash define, and then we have the constant name followed by a little space, and then we have a value. Example, hash define max space 5. Now let's look at the examples of constants. First we have hash include iostream, and using namespace std, this is the header file section, and then we have hash define val120. This tells that val1 will always be equivalent to 20, and then val2 6, and then new line equal to the next line character. Now here we have int tot. Now total will be equivalent to val1 and val2, and then cout total. And in the next line we have cout new line. And using the const keyword, we have const keyword followed by data type and then the constant name, and it's equivalent to this particular value. And similarly for this one. And these both are used in this program. Now let's look at data type. A data type is a data storage format that can contain a specific type or range of values that can be stored in a variable. In C++, we have two different types of data types. First one is the primitive data type, and the second one is the derived data type. The primitive data types are those that are built in or predefined in the programming language, and this can be used directly by the user to declare variables. These are character, integer, floating point, boolean, double floating point, void, and void character. Derived data types. Derived data types are those data types that are derived from the built-in data types. So they are called as derived data types. And these are arrays, function, pointer, and reference. So now let's look at integer data type. The keyword is int, which stands for integer, and its default size is 4 bytes. And this is the typical range. Now what does signed int means? Signed int means that this integer data type can extend to both negative and positive values. So here we can see that it's extending to negative and positive values. Similarly, what does unsigned int means? Unsigned int means that there is no sign for the particular integer. It has only magnitude. So here we can see that it's going from 0 to a maximum range. And also we can note that this maximum range ranges from 0 to this value, which is the double of this particular range in one fold. Similarly, we have short and long integers, and unsigned long and unsigned short, and also signed long and signed short. The only difference is that we'll be having different sizes for each type modifier. Now let's look at character data types. The keyword is char. Description: any single character. It may include letter, a digit, punctuation mark, or space, or any special character. Its size is 1 byte. Its typical range is -128 to 127, or 0 to 255. This is the case of unsigned character. Here we'll be having signed character and unsigned character. The wide char T, which is used to signify characters which are 2 bytes wide. Now let's look at floating data type. The floating data type actually holds the real values, that is the values with decimal points. Float. Floating point number, there is no fixed number of digits before or after the decimal point. Its size is 4 bytes. This is the typical range, that is equivalent to 7 digits. That is, after the decimal point, we can have up to 7 digits if we are using the float data type. And in the double data type, the double precision floating point number, more accurate compared to float. Here the size is 8 bytes and the precision is up to 15 digits. And then we have long double. Its size is also 8 bytes and its typical range is also 15 digits. Now let's look at the Boolean data type. Boolean data type's keyword is bool, and its description is it can only take two values, either true or false. Here true can be represented by integer 1 and false can be represented by integer 0, and its size is 1 byte, and its typical range is true or false. Now let's look at derived data types. The derived data types are of 3 types: arrays, functions and pointers, and the other one is the reference. Arrays. Array is contiguous set of memory locations which contains data of a specific data type. Example, char string of 3. Here char is the type of data, here string is the variable name, and this variable name can hold 3 values. So that's indicated by this number. And it's equivalent to x, y, z. Here x and y and z are 3 individual characters. So 1, 2 and 3. So there are total of 3 characters. And then we have functions. So basically a function is a building block of the program. This contains a set of instructions which are required to execute a particular task. Functions are basically used to make our code more refined and standard. And an example of a function is the main function, which is the starting point of our C++ program. And also we have pointers. Pointers are used to point to a memory location or address in C++. Now let's look at the example. Int *IP. The word that appears after star is called as the pointer. So here the name of the pointer is IP. Now IP is used to store the address of X. So basically we are trying to manipulate the value of X using its address. So the address of X is accessed using the AND operator and then is assigned to IP. Now using *IP, the value of 10 is put into the address of X. So that's all from today's lecture, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Like, share and subscribe to EduMoon. Happy learning. Thank you, guys.